It's difficult to pinpoint the exact moment it began, that shift in our relationship, but I've always known, deep down, that Mark and I were different. We were siblings, yes, but there was an unspoken language between us, a quiet understanding that transcended the usual brother-sister dynamic. I never imagined it would become this intricate dance of longing and guilt. It started, as most things do, innocently enough. One evening, David was out, and our parents were visiting friends. Mark and I were home alone. The air crackled with a tension I couldn't name, a silent hum that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the house. I was in my room, lost in the pages of a rather tedious novel, when he walked in without knocking. A rarity for him, usually so careful about respecting boundaries. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and gym shorts, and the way he looked at me was different. His gaze held a weight that made my heart leap against my ribs. "What are you reading?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. He sat on the edge of my bed, close enough that I could smell his familiar scent, a mix of clean laundry and the faint musk of his aftershave, the same scent that always had this odd effect on me. "Nothing important," I managed, my pulse quickening. This proximity was far from innocent, and we both knew it. Our eyes met, and a shiver ran through me, a promise of things unsaid. We talked about nothing of consequence, the kind of conversation siblings have, but every word was laced with double meaning, every gesture a hidden message. When he laughed, his breath grazed my neck, sending a jolt of warmth through me. "Are you cold?" he asked, noticing my goosebumps. He knew full well that I wasn't cold, that these shivers were something else entirely. "No," I whispered, and that single word seemed to freeze time. He shifted closer, his knee brushing mine, the touch sending another wave of heat through my body. We were engaged in a dangerous game, a silent ballet where every move had two interpretations. He traced a line on the book with his finger, his hand grazing my arm in the process. An innocent act, but we both knew it was a pretext for contact. A silence descended between us, heavy with unspoken words and restrained desire. I placed my hand over his, a simple gesture, yet loaded with implications we dared not articulate. He leaned in, his face so close I could see the tiny flecks of gold in his eyes, like a landscape begging to be explored. "Maybe I should go," he said, but he remained still. "Maybe not," I replied, my heart hammering against my chest. That night, we'd crossed a line, venturing into a realm where brotherly affection blurred into something deeper and more dangerous. Every move was now a dance step, each action teetering on the edge of harmless sibling play and something more forbidden. We were caught in a whirlwind of emotions, every breath a silent declaration. After that night, every interaction was different, charged with a new awareness. The air between us was thick with a tension that hadn't existed before. The next morning at breakfast, our parents seemed miles away, their presence almost irrelevant. Our knees touched under the table, an easy, innocent contact that sent a jolt of electricity through me. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, his eyes meeting mine, a slight smirk playing on his lips, a shared secret between us. "Very well," I replied, my cheeks flushing under the intensity of his stare. It wasn't a lie, but it was far from the complete truth. I'd spent the night replaying every moment, every sensation, in my mind. In the days that followed, we found excuses to be alone together. The house transformed into our playground, every room a potential setting for our stolen moments. In the living room, our hands would brush while reaching for the remote. In the backyard, he'd guide my hands as he taught me to throw a ball, his fingers lingering a fraction of a second longer than necessary. One afternoon, we were alone in the kitchen, baking cookies. The oven's heat was nothing compared to the tension building between us. He came up behind me as if to help with the dough, his arms enveloping mine, whispering, like this. His breath against my ear sent a shiver down my spine. Our movements were in sync, yet the real dance was in the silence between us, filled with unspoken words and longing. Each encounter intensified the situation, each touch pulling us closer to an edge we weren't sure we could retreat from. One evening while we watched a movie, he casually placed his arm on the back of the couch, and then, seemingly by accident, it landed on my shoulder. The warmth of his skin through our clothes was like a spark igniting a fire and slowly consuming the reservations we held. The movie faded into the background as we found ourselves looking at each other more than the screen, the flickering light of the television casting shadows that enhanced the moment's mystique. "Are you cold?" he asked, his hand lightly gliding along my arm. "No," I said, my voice trembling, betraying a mix of apprehension and excitement. He took my hand, gently squeezing it, a silent declaration of our mutual understanding. We spent the rest of the evening in quiet complicity, each passing minute drawing us deeper into this dangerous game. As days turned into weeks, our game of subtle hints became bolder. One morning, while I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, he entered to grab a towel. Our eyes met in the mirror, sharing a moment of intensity that spoke volumes. We were learning the art of restraint and desire, exploring the uncharted territory of our shared unspoken desires. We were complicit in this dance of hidden meanings, tiptoeing along the fragile line that separated innocence from transgression. Each night, alone in my room, I'd replay these moments, my mind swirling with images and feelings I dared not admit even to myself. This suspense was becoming unbearable. Each encounter, each lingering touch, a step deeper into a world where the boundaries of brother and sister were blurred, where the love and connection I had always known was being transformed into something forbidden. It was overwhelming, thrilling, terrifying, all at once. My marriage to David was comfortable, predictable, and in its own way, lovely. But it was never like this. There was no unspoken language, no dangerous dance, no heart-stopping tension. With David, it was always logical, a partnership, a choice. My friends, Emma and Mary, would often talk about their husbands, their trials and tribulations, their comfortable ruts. I never spoke about Mark, never dared to. The idea of sharing my growing conflict with them was impossible. They wouldn't understand. No one would understand. There was no language for what Mark and I were doing, for what we were becoming. And I, Laurel, the 44-year-old writer, find myself caught in a story not of my own making, a story that is rewriting the very foundations of my life. With every shared glance, every whispered word, every lingering touch, I am reminded that the greatest stories are often the ones we never intended to tell. This is my truth, this is my reality, and it is terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly mine.